Hi, me again. Today I'm going to talk about Microsoft Project again. Now, one of the things that frustrate people about using Project is this here, which is called the timescale. So don't get confused between this and the timeline, which is actually quite useful, and I'll cover that in another presentation. We're talking here about the timescale, which is this here, and that relates to this section here in the zoom. Now, the thing that frustrates people is a few things, because one of them is if you have your financial year set to anything other than January, it will actually date the years here with the year in which the accounts are due, so it will be using financial years. So that December there will show as December 15, and then it will go and show January as 15, because both of those months, their accounts are due in March 15. So this can be quite confusing. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways that we can turn that off first of all. So the simplest way is File, Options and Schedule, and simply set the fiscal year to start in January. Now you notice here how this option here greys out if you've got it set to January. If I set it to April, which would be the UK setting, this is now darker. But if I just go back in to have a look at my timeline, you'll see how December has now changed to show 15, and yet January also shows 15. Now the other thing you'll notice, when I hover over a day, it has an FY before the day. This is because it's showing fiscal years or financial years. So if it is showing that, the simplest thing to do is to go back into here, File, Options, Schedule, change it to January, and that simply turns off the financial year numbering. And back to how it was, 14 followed by 15, which is good. Now the other thing that frustrates people is first of all thinking that each of these tick areas down here represents a single day. But actually in this instance they don't, and if I hover over there, if you can just see as it flashes up, it's flashing up and it's telling me a date range rather than an individual date, and it's actually showing me 2 days on each of these ticks, and you'll see there for the Saturday, that's actually Saturday and Sunday. One way to know is to have a look up here and see where it tells you how many days you've got. The other way is in here. If you double click on that there, you'll see there the middle tier is showing me 1 week, which is this here. The bottom tier, however, is showing me 2 days. So each of these ticks down here represents 2 days. All I can do is change that back down to 1 and click OK. And each of these is now showing an individual day. Okay, the other way of doing that, if I just do Ctrl Z to put it back to where it was, the other way of doing that is simply to change here and just choose days, and that will now show individual days rather than 2 days for each. Now the other thing that really frustrates people is whenever you click on the pluses down here. So if I click plus, it's zooming in, and then I click minus again, and you would expect it to go back to where it was previously, but now rather than showing 1 day, it's now showing 26 hours. And if I zoom out again, it's now showing me 3 days for each of these. So what we want is we actually want a different way of zooming this area in. So if I set that back to days first of all, because that's how I want it to be, but I want it to zoom in so it fills the screen. So double click on here to bring up the timeline controls, and what I'm now going to do is, you see where it says size, I'm going to use this and increase this. So if I make that 200% and click OK, I've still got individual days showing here, but they're twice as big as they were before, so it's actually almost filling the screen. So if I were to set that to 250 for example, that gives me a much better fill of the screen. Now I've actually gone ahead to the next stage, and I've actually written a macro that does this for you because I don't like doing things the long way. So I'm simply going to click on that little button there, timescale zoom in, click on there. It asks me how much I want to zoom in, so if I just say 100, that takes it back to the standard 100%. If I click on there and say 250, it zooms it straight into the 250. I'll just switch over and show you what the code looks like for this macro. So it's that one there, step into, and it really is as simple as that. So the key thing there is I've set a dimension which is called string zoom, and I've set it as a string. I could have set it as a number, and I then say string zoom equals the input box, which is what comes up on the screen, the message that comes up on the screen, and it asks you for whatever's in the quotes there. That's what it types in there, and then what you put in is data entry. The data entry will then become that value there, string zoom. If string zoom is nothing, then exit the subroutine. Otherwise, do these settings here, which is timescale edit, and the enlargement of it equals the string zoom, and everything else is just the default settings. So that's it for the macro, and if I just go back and run that again, so I've just added the macro there, click on that, and I'm going to say 300 this time, and you see how it just zooms in just a little bit, and that actually nicely fills the space I've got there. I hope that's been useful. I'm the Adobe guy. Thank you for listening.